talking one and done college basketball, Kentucky had not one, not two, but 7 players declared for the NBA draft this week. It's an ongoing issue with guys want to going from the college ranks into the NBA.
John Calipari's a proud papa.
There's an age limit. There's a lot of issues. You know, do I get injured? You know, what insurance issues? Should I go overseas? Mike, if you are the NCAA and Mr. Commissioner Adam Silver, how the heck do you fix this mess that's been ongoing for a long time?
I think the first thing that they need to do is admit that the NCAA has this invisible bridge connected to the NBA. It's just that the NBA is so separated from the processes that are involved in the NCAA, and that a one-and-done situation is actually good on all levels. I mean, if you look at LeBron James again, if LeBron James goes to, let's say, UCLA, a big school like Kentucky, and gets injured in his first year, we're not talking about the Cavaliers, we're not talking about the Heat.
No.
I think that they have to understand that these kids, because that's what they are, they're students, are not getting paid. So if I'm John Wall, I'm
not officially.
Not officially, yeah.
But they're still driving their Ferraris.
They're still driving their Ferraris, but the thing is, they've got to think for themselves, and they've got to think about themselves. It seems selfish, but why
are you able to make those decisions at that age? I know when I was 17, like, you're making me make major league decisions like that. I don't know if I would have been able to make that.
Phil, age. The age limit right now is 19 to get in the NBA.
Which basically means you have to do 1 year.
Yeah. They're thinking of moving it to 20.
Oof.
Do you think this should be moved or eliminated? What do you do?
Well, right now we're seeing what I think is going to be a growing trend of players going to other leagues, seeing players go to China, overseas. Look, do I think some players benefit from playing in college? Absolutely. But that injury risk, although I think there's always going to be an injury risk, right? And other sports have shown, like especially in football and hockey, that they do play university or college level, right? And it's kind of a prerequisite. Like, you would never draft a quarterback right out of high school, right? You need that seasoning. And so it's kind of been instilled that it's up to the player to get that seasoning. So if you instill that same idea, the thing is, 1 to 2 years, it's kind of like, I don't really see the difference. Like, for me, it's either 0 or you have to go the whole thing. Like, I don't see the point in the middle, because are you really going to learn that much in a one-and-done system where the coach knows you're gone in a year, you know you're gone in a year? Like, the players who really benefit to me from college basketball stay there.
Like the Damian Lillards.
And your Tim Duncans.
Yeah. Well, that's a different era.
Yeah, no, sure, but at the same point, like, you have players who learn how to play at a higher level. It's less about me ball, right? I find those players tend to play better with others.
I've been trying to think of outside the box ideas to fix this. It's not an easy game to play with. I was thinking, you know, why not eliminate, let's say you can go pro whenever. Let's say you're Thon Maker, the Australian guy who's playing here in Canada right now. You know, he's 17, 18 years old. He's going to say, I'm going to go pro.
I think it's a bad idea.
And so, no, listen. And so the NBA says, okay, you can go pro. This is what happens. You're going to sign an NBA contract, and you're going to play in the D League until you're 20, 21. You're going to have your contract deferred. You're going to have insurance in case you get injured, but you're not going to play in the NBA. You're going to be in the D League, and you're going to be learning slowly seasoning until you get to a certain
So the NBA team is never allowed to call you up.
Can't call you up till, say, your 21st birthday.
That seems fair to, again, what I try to do often is put myself in the player's position, right? So I'm a first-year student in Kentucky. I'm playing well, and I know that I can go as a top 10 pick. What's stopping me from signing a contract? I understand from an NBA level, they don't want to invest millions in someone they haven't seen play for 1 or 2 years. And again, high school kids coming out of high school straight to the NBA, it's an even bigger risk. There's their attitudes. You don't get a real sense of their character. When you go to college, there's a lot of opportunity to get into trouble, which I think sometimes is even good, because it can
although there's more people watching you at the same time, right?
Well, exactly.
There's always a criticism of these guys coming from Australia as if no one's seen them.
Right. And I'm not saying getting into trouble is good, but you can get an idea of what this kid can do with that type of attention, with that type of power, that type of, you know, a walk-on-water atmosphere that he goes through on campus every day. And I think that 1 year can give you a good idea of that. I think coming out of high school is a lot more difficult, and of course you want the person to be of age. A lot of rookies came in and they were even underage, couldn't go drinking with their teammates and things like that. So I don't know how much seasoning you can get in a year or two even, because the NBA game is completely different. And I think it might come down to more of a financial concern, the way I see it, that, sure, they played under Kentucky, they did very well, they made it to the Final Four, about how are they going to react when they're coming off the bench. What is their character like? Is this kid and his attitude and his game worth, you know, a rookie contract for a few years?
Okay, well, I actually have an idea about that. You're talking money, right?
Correct.
I was getting this idea off my friend, a fellow writer here for Hoops Lounge, Mike Rumberg. He's finishing up his master's degree, and this is going to influence how much he makes as a teacher. So I'm thinking, why not have the NBA set the standard saying if you have your degree, you're now eligible for X amount of raises. Like your salary cap structure now grows to make up for the loss of revenue. Those 4 years, still tough because you might get injured, sure, but you have your degree at that point. And if you come out, you're seasoned, maybe you played in Kentucky 4 years, you have a degree, and then instead of your first one being, you know, whatever, 5-year 100, it's a 5-year 115, 120, right? And that kind of idea. So your resume actually bolsters your potential earnings.
Assumingly they're at a good school that actually encourages them to attend classes and not have cheerleaders.
Okay, so what you're thinking is it's just going to be these gimme classes and then players, but they're still forced to stay there for 4 years, right?
Right.
And so you still have to play in the collegiate system. And so then, if you're a player and you know that, are you actually going to go to a school that has just gimme things? Maybe you will, but would you risk that?
Or you go to a Duke, you know, because you know at a place like that.
Look, I have to stay here 4 years because I've chosen this path.
Right.
I want a good education, and hand in hand, the reform has to be with the collegiate system, because we saw in all these documentaries that they don't have time to study. Let's be frank, you know, they're just busy. If you put in a way saying, hey, listen, I'm going to give you a DeMarcus Cousins for 4 years, guaranteed, but you have to make sure he gets study time. Maybe it hurts you're on the court, but you'd have more people. Look, I'm staying here for 4 years, and the next guy's staying here for 4 years. You would get more consistent talent in every team. And so teams with good education systems and teams that players hear that they allow you to go study and acquire this, because if you don't get it, you know, this is just a preliminary discussion, but I think you can just work the business to it. I mean, the whole conversation is people are upset that business and money are getting into sports. Well, use it against it.
There's a documentary that just came out this week, 30 for 30 documentary by ESPN called Soul Man. And it's about this guy named Sonny Vaccaro, who's the Marlon Brando godfather of the sneaker industry, and how he basically brought that into college hoops. You know, it's a kind of I'd say a bit of a dark side of the industry. You know, you can't pay the player. This was a quote. Can't pay the players, so I'm going to pay the coaches, and they're going to get the money to the players somehow, some shape, some form. It's difficult to talk about. I mean, obviously it's a $1 billion industry right now. These coaches are making millions. Their players are free marketing, essentially.
Let's not forget about the schools. It's a cash cow for the schools as well.
Giant cash cow. I mean, the question is, do they start paying players over the table?
I think if you do that, it's going to be a situation where you have to pay all student athletes.
Yeah.
I mean, even
the
if
swimmers, the joggers,
the baseball players, the lacrosse players, everybody has to get paid, even if it's the same amount across the board. Even that.
And then tuition for non-student athletes probably goes up at that point, right? Because they're already giving away these bursaries to the student athletes. Then they have to pay them out again, and so because people forget in a lot of these schools, tuition's expensive.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not like they're not giving the money.
In that case, then maybe have sort of an insurance, like you mentioned before. If you get hurt, you can still complete 4 years in college and at least have that as a backup, but that doesn't even exist right now. So
that needs to be there.
It has to be there, and I also think that if you can, you know, have a connection between the NCAA, the D League, and the NBA to sort of have that transition. So let's say Chicago drafts first. Let's say that player automatically doesn't play in the NBA; he goes straight to the D League, and they can bring him up a little bit like how hockey works. And I think that is one of the biggest things missing. Personally, for me in the NBA, the farm teams.
And then it would be a true developmental league at that
Exactly. So you don't have to worry about DeMarcus Cousins. Sorry to pick on him, but you could have had him get out all whatever issues he's had in the D League and tell him, hey, look, the NBA is waiting for you. You can excel. You can win.
And then coaches would want to go there because you know you're going to be fostering more talent. So because right now there seems to be this gap, right? I'm either a college coach or I'm an NBA coach or an assistant coach. No one seems to really want to be a D League coach.
Well, because there's maybe not that connection or that, I guess, shine that they get. But if you think about it this way, you get a player going to the D League, you can actually get them into the system early, because really when you watch college basketball, it's pretty all over the place. As much as it's entertaining, if you can get that player into a system early on, knowing what team he's going to go to, because the head coach can come down and talk to him, can come see him once in a while if the time is available, and you have less of. I mean, if you look at the draft list, a lot of those guys are nowhere to be found. I mean, the top picks, yes, some of the few ones that fall below are still here, but go through any draft year and just a lot of those players are nowhere to be found, and that's part of the problem. They just can't make the jump over. And if we had that D-League sort of hold their hand.
Well, it's not just talent; it's lifestyle. It's maturing and dealing with finances. I mean, some of the lucky guys, like we've heard of stories like Klay Thompson. I don't know if you heard of that, how his dad kind of helps with his finances. And
he barely said that's not true, but there should be more of that. Like having financial advice, having people help with issues like substance abuse, mental illness, all that stuff should be part of the package when you come.
Well, the NBA tried to have that with like that weekend, and we all heard it. Like Shabazz Muhammad bringing his prostitute or whatever into the. No, he brought a girl into campus, and that was a no-no, so he got kicked out of it.
Right.
But I don't think a weekend's enough.
It's got to be a year-round process, especially with the.
And it's got to be kind of a humbling process. Like I feel either way, having to go back to school for 4 years or your D-League plan, which I actually like, by the way. I just felt the university, at least you have that, right? If things don't work out. Although it's not to say you couldn't do both.
Well, I do know that in the NBA, the rookies do have sort of a, like you said, a weekend session. I mean, every year they have it for the rookies. They sit them all down in a room, they've got their pens and papers open, and they really go through how to manage your money as best they can.
But these guys just got paid, and
their agents in their area.
And a lot of these guys come, I mean, let's be frank, they come from broken households. Some of them come from single-parent homes, don't have a lot going up where they grew up. So this is a completely new world for them, and they have an open.
What they need is mentors more than anything.
That's it.
So a mentorship problem is they have to have mentors, they have to have a system in place for them to grow professionally on and off the court.
Wouldn't that sound good if the NBA implemented something where veterans, whatever, could get X amount more if they volunteer for a veteran assist, like Big Brother kind of program?
I think that would be a great idea. I mean, it keeps the older players involved in the NBA after they retire, and you can maybe avoid a lot of what you're seeing. I mean, like the Antoine Walker situation was a tough one. I mean, he's a champion, right? And he's trying to get himself back into the D-League a few years ago and couldn't even make it back to the NBA, and he's broke. And that's tough to watch. So I think a mentorship program would be good. How you get every rookie a mentor would be a little bit difficult, I think. But again, to piggyback off what Mark said, I think having the D-League...
Or to some guest speakers of players who have fallen off the rails, right? Like having Antoine Walker speak to the class of rookies. There's a myriad of issues. But I mean, to sum it up, college hoops, should they get paid? Just simply.
Yes.
The players.
For me, it's a yes across the board. All student athletes, whether it be minimum wage or whatever the case be, they should get a paycheck for what they're doing because they're bringing money to the schools.
For me, I read this story the other day and it kind of broke my heart. There was a college football player who had been homeless for part of his life, just went through struggles, and he had a guy help him out, giving him some bucks for rent and food and help him get back on his feet. He got made ineligible for this season because of this. These guys need to get paid. They're bringing so much money into the community. It's not like they're doing anything wrong.
Oh,
just give them a
when we say the community, what we're really meaning is the administration.
When Chris Webber is at Michigan at Fab 5 and he's seeing his number 4 jersey selling in stores across Detroit and wherever he was,
he can barely eat.
And he wasn't making a dime off of it. You gotta question that.
Was a story last year. Shabazz Napier apparently couldn't eat during the playoffs or something. Like he didn't have consistent meals, and he was still a champion.
He was going to bed hungry. I mean, he said it directly to the media in a press conference. I'm not sure if it was a press conference or in the locker room, but either way, it came out, quoted, "Sometimes I go to bed and I don't eat." And that's not good in any situation. I mean, regardless of the sport that you're in. But I think in college hoops specifically, too, there's just so much money being generated that there has to be either an insurance, there has to either be a paycheck waiting for them when they get out, whether they get drafted or not, or some sort of a trust fund, if you will, just waiting for them when they get out so they can at least make something of themselves, finish school or not, and if they get in or not, have that insurance. There's no safety net for them at all. And that's maybe why the one and done is so popular, because if you're not looking out for me, I'm gone. And they're off to the NBA.
Absolutely. Well, listen, it's a complicated subject, and this conversation will continue for a lot. So what we want to do, before I let you guys go, is Mike, I want to give a shout out to everything you're doing and let the people know what you're bringing in the world of sports in Montreal.
Yeah, Twitter handle is @HoopsAddiction on Twitter, contributor for RBTL Sports. What I try to do as much as possible is look at the game objectively. I have my favorite teams, I have my favorite players, but when I'm watching it, I try to make everything I write about as clear-cut and objective as possible without taking any sides or bias, and that's how I'll do it from here on.
All right.
Mike is further proof that there's so much basketball love in Montreal, in our city, in our country. Thanks for being on, Mike.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I've got a bunch of things coming up. Always check us out at hoopslounge.com. Tons of basketball stuff, podcasts, articles, contests, everything. We're here every Sunday, 2 o'clock Eastern, at Griffin Radio at Mason Associates.
Yeah, stop by, grab a coffee, grab some food. It's really nice here.
Yeah.
Anyways, for myself, Phil Boileau, aka Sporting Phil, Marc Griffin, aka Montreal Marc, and Mike Masaya, aka Hoops Addiction. I got it right this time. We want to say thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time in the lounge.